David felt his chest tighten as he watched the woman who used to be his wife walk into the restaurant. She looked different. Better. Her skin glowed with happiness, her smile was genuine, and she moved with a confidence he had never seen during their 15 years of marriage. But what made his hands shake wasn't seeing her again after 2 years. It was the man beside her. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore an expensive suit that fit perfectly. He had salt and pepper hair and kind eyes that never left her face. When he pulled out her chair, she laughed at something he whispered. The sound hit David like a punch to the stomach. He couldn't remember the last time he had made her laugh like that. David sat frozen at his corner table, his date chattering about something he couldn't focus on. His 25-year-old girlfriend Ashley was pretty enough, but watching his ex-wife with this stranger made him realize something horrible. He had made the biggest mistake of his life. 2 years ago, David had been so sure he was doing the right thing. He was 45, successful, and tired of feeling old. His wife of 15 years had gained weight after their kids grew up. She spent her evenings reading books instead of going out. She preferred quiet dinners at home to fancy restaurants. She was boring, he told himself. He deserved better. So when Ashley started flirting with him at work, he felt alive again. She was young, exciting, and made him feel important. The affair lasted 6 months before he finally asked for a divorce. His wife had cried, but she didn't fight him. She signed the papers and moved out of their house without taking much. He thought she would fall apart without him. He was wrong. Now, watching her across the restaurant, David saw a woman who had rebuilt herself into something stronger. She wore a simple black dress that hugged her curves perfectly. Her hair was styled in a way that made her look younger. She carried herself like she owned the world. The man with her looked familiar, but David couldn't place him. He was clearly wealthy from his clothes and watch. More importantly, he looked at David's ex-wife like she was the most precious thing in the world. Every few minutes, he would reach across the table to touch her hand. She would smile and squeeze back. David felt sick. "Are you okay?" Ashley asked, following his gaze. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," David lied, but his voice came out rough. Ashley turned to look at what had caught his attention. "Oh wow, she's pretty. Do you know her?" David nodded slowly. "That's my ex-wife." Ashley's eyes widened. "Really? She looks good. Who's the guy?" "I don't know," David admitted, and the words tasted bitter. As if sensing his stare, his ex-wife looked up. Their eyes met across the crowded restaurant. For a moment, time stopped. Then she smiled. Not a sad smile or an angry one. It was the smile of someone who had moved on completely. She raised her hand in a small wave, then turned back to her companion. David's chest felt tight. He couldn't breathe properly. The restaurant suddenly felt too hot, too crowded, too loud. He needed air. "I have to go," he said, standing so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. "What?" "But we just ordered," Ashley protested. "I'm sorry. I just remembered something important. Stay and eat. I'll pay for everything." He threw $200 on the table and rushed toward the exit. As he passed their table, he heard his ex-wife laugh again. The sound followed him out into the cold night air. Once outside, David leaned against his car and tried to calm down. His marriage had been good once. They had been happy in the beginning. She had supported him through law school, working 2 jobs to pay their bills. She had been there when he started his practice, celebrating every small victory. She had raised their children while he built his career. When had he stopped seeing her? When had he started taking her for granted? When had he decided that 15 years of partnership meant nothing compared to the thrill of a younger woman? David drove home to the house they used to share. Ashley had moved in 6 months ago, but it still didn't feel right. His ex-wife's touch was everywhere, even though she had taken very little when she left. The garden she had spent years perfecting. The paint colors she had chosen. The way she had arranged the furniture to catch the morning light. Ashley was already asleep when he got home, her makeup smeared on his pillow. David sat in his study and poured himself a drink. Then another. And another. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through old photos. Pictures of family vacations, birthday parties, quiet moments at home. In every single photo, his ex-wife was smiling at him like he was her whole world. When had he stopped appreciating that look? The alcohol made everything worse. His chest ached with regret. His hands shook as he realized what he had lost. Not just a wife but his best friend. The mother of his children. The woman who had known him better than anyone else in the world. By the time he fell asleep in his chair, David had made a decision. He was going to win her back. He had to. Whatever it took, however long it took, he would prove to her that leaving her had been the biggest mistake of his life. He just had no idea how impossible that was going to be. David woke up with a headache and a phone full of missed calls from Ashley. The sunlight streaming through his study window felt like knives in his skull. He stumbled to the kitchen for coffee and found a note on the counter. Went to my sister's. Call me when you're ready to explain last night. He crumpled the note and threw it away. Ashley was the least of his problems right now. He needed to find out about the man he had seen with his ex-wife. More importantly, he needed to figure out how to approach her. David showered and dressed carefully, choosing a suit she had always complimented. He drove to the coffee shop where she used to go every Saturday morning, hoping she still kept the same routine. His luck held. She was there, sitting by the window with a book and a large coffee. She looked up when he approached her table. "Hello, David. Can I sit?" She gestured to the empty chair across from her. Of course. Up close, the changes in her were even more obvious. She had lost weight, but in a healthy way. Her skin was clear and bright. She wore simple clothes that somehow looked more expensive than his designer suit. Most importantly, she seemed calm. Peaceful in a way she never had during their marriage. "You look good," he said carefully. "Thank you. So do you." They sat in awkward silence for a moment. David had practiced this conversation in his head, but now he couldn't remember what he wanted to say. "I saw you last night," he finally admitted. "At Romano's." "I know. You looked shocked." I am. I didn't expect." He trailed off, not sure how to finish. "You didn't expect me to move on?" The directness of her question caught him off guard. "I guess not. Not so completely." She closed her book and leaned back in her chair. "David, we've been divorced for 2 years. What did you think would happen?" "I thought you'd be angry. Or sad. Or trying to get back at me." She smiled, and it wasn't mean or bitter. It was almost pitying. "I was angry. And sad. For about 6 months. Then I realized something. You did me a favor." David felt like she had slapped him. "A favor?" "You freed me from a marriage that wasn't working. For either of us." "Our marriage was fine," he protested. "No, it wasn't. We both know that. We were living like roommates for the last few years. Going through the motions. I was miserable and so were you. The difference is I was willing to keep pretending. You weren't." David stared at her. This wasn't the woman he remembered. His ex-wife had been quiet, agreeable, always trying to keep peace. This woman was confident and direct. "I loved you," he said quietly. "I know. And I loved you. But love isn't always enough, is it?" "It could be. We could try again. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I know that now." She sighed and picked up her coffee. "David, I'm happy now. Really happy. For the first time in years." "With him? The man from last night?" "Yes." "Who is he?" She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "His name is Robert. He's a doctor. A good man." "How long have you been seeing him?" 8 months. David felt jealous burn in his chest. "Is it serious?" She looked him straight in the eye. "Very serious." "Are you sleeping with him?" The question came out harsher than he intended. She flinched slightly, then her expression hardened. "That's not your business anymore. You're still my children's mother. It's partly my business. The kids are adults, David. And they like Robert very much. He treats them with respect. He treats me with respect." The implication hung in the air between them. David had not always been respectful, especially toward the end of their marriage. He had been dismissive, critical, always finding fault. "I can change," he said desperately. "I have changed. Being without you made me realize what I lost." She shook her head sadly. "You didn't lose me, David. You threw me away. There's a difference. So that's it? You won't even consider giving us another chance. I gave you 15 years of chances. Every time you came home late without calling. Every time you criticized my cooking or my clothes or my friends. Every time you made me feel like I wasn't good enough. I kept hoping you would see me again. Really see me." David felt ashamed. She was right and they both knew it. "I see you now," he whispered. "Yes, you do. But only because someone else does too. Only because you realized other men might want what you threw away." She stood up and gathered her things. "I have to go. Robert is taking me shopping for a dress. We're going to a charity gala next weekend." "Wait," David said, standing too. "Can we talk again? Please?" She paused at the door. "David, I don't hate you. You're the father of my children, and we have grandchildren to consider. We can be civil. We can even be friendly. But we can't be married. Not again. I won't go backward." She left him standing there, feeling more alone than he ever had in his life. David spent the rest of the day driving around the city, thinking. He ended up at the cemetery where his parents were buried. Sitting on the bench near their graves, he remembered what his mother had told him about marriage just before she died. "Son," she had said, "marriage isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about choosing to love someone imperfect perfectly. Every single day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." He had failed at that. When loving his wife became work instead of pleasure, he had looked for someone easier to love. Someone who didn't know his flaws yet. Someone who still thought he was perfect. Now that someone was Ashley, and he was already getting tired of her. She was beautiful but shallow. Fun but self-centered. She made him feel young, but she also made him feel empty. His ex-wife had been real. Complex. Sometimes difficult, but always worth the effort. She had seen all of him, good and bad, and loved him anyway. Until he made it impossible for her to keep loving him. David pulled out his phone and called Ashley. She answered on the first ring. "Are you ready to apologize?" she asked. "I'm ready to break up," he said quietly. The silence stretched so long he thought she had hung up. "What?" "This isn't working, Ashley. We both know it." "Is this about that woman last night?" "Your ex-wife." "Partly. But mostly it's about us. We don't fit." "We fit fine in bed," she said, trying to sound seductive. "That's not enough anymore. David, you're having a midlife crisis. Don't make any big decisions right now." "I'm 47. This isn't a midlife crisis. This is me finally growing up." Ashley started crying, but it sounded more angry than sad. "You can't do this to me. I left my apartment for you. I gave up my life for you. You gave up a studio apartment and a job you hated. I'll help you get back on your feet. But we're done." "Fine," she spat. "But don't come crawling back when you realize what you're giving up." She hung up. David sat in the cemetery until the sun started to set, then drove home to pack Ashley's things. Ashley was gone by the time David got home from work the next day. She had taken her clothes and left his house key on the kitchen counter, along with a note calling him several names he deserved. David crumpled it up and threw it away without reading it completely. For the first time in months, the house was quiet. Really quiet. David walked through the rooms, seeing them with new eyes. This had been a home once. He and his ex-wife had bought it when their youngest was 10. They had spent weekends painting rooms and planting gardens. She had sewn curtains for every window. He had built shelves for her books. Now it felt like a museum of his mistakes. David opened a bottle of wine and sat on the back porch. The garden was overgrown. His ex-wife had always kept it perfect, with flowers blooming from spring through fall. Without her care, it had turned wild. Weeds choked the roses she had planted. The vegetable patch was empty except for a few stubborn tomato plants. His phone rang. The caller ID showed his daughter's name. "Hi, sweetheart. Dad, are you okay?" Ashley called me. She was really upset. David sighed. He should have known Ashley would reach out to his kids. "We broke up. She said you dumped her out of nowhere. She said you're obsessed with Mom." Ashley is dramatic. "But yes, we broke up." His daughter was quiet for a moment. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you regret divorcing Mom?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you've seemed miserable for 2 years. Even with Ashley. And Mom seems happier than I've ever seen her." David closed his eyes. "Your mother is seeing someone." "I know. Robert. He's really great, Dad. The kids love him. He comes to soccer games and school plays. He remembers everyone's birthdays. Last week he helped Tommy with his science project." Each word felt like a knife. Those were things David should have been doing. Things he used to do before he got too busy with work and his own selfish wants. "How serious are they?" he asked, dreading the answer. "Pretty serious. Mom is really happy. She laughs all the time now. She's taken up painting again." "Did you know she wanted to be an artist before she met you?" David didn't know that. In 15 years of marriage, his ex-wife had never mentioned wanting to be an artist. How many other dreams had she given up for him? "She's taking classes at the community college," his daughter continued. "Her paintings are actually really good. Robert bought her a whole art studio set up for her apartment." He bought her art supplies? A whole studio. Easels, canvases, professional paints, everything. Mom cried when she saw it. Happy tears though. She said no one had ever supported her dreams like that before. The implication was clear. David had never supported his ex-wife's dreams because he had never bothered to learn what they were. "Dad, are you there?" "I'm here." "I know the divorce was hard on everyone. But maybe it was for the best. You and Mom are both happier now, right? David wanted to laugh at the irony. His daughter thought he was happier. Everyone probably thought he was happier. The successful lawyer who traded his boring wife for a young, pretty girlfriend. Living the dream. Except he wasn't happy. He was more miserable than he had ever been. Dad. I have to go, sweetheart. We'll talk soon. David hung up and poured another glass of wine. Then another. By the time he went to bed, the bottle was empty and his head was spinning. He dreamed of his ex-wife. Not the woman he had seen in the coffee shop, confident and glowing. He dreamed of the woman she used to be when they were young. They were in their first apartment, dancing in the kitchen while dinner cooked. She was laughing, her arms around his neck, looking at him like he hung the stars. I love you, Dream Wife said. I'll always love you. I love you too, Dream David replied. Forever. David woke up with tears on his face. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. David went to work, came home to his empty house, and drank wine while looking at old photos. He started driving by his ex-wife's apartment building, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. He never saw her, but twice he saw Robert's car in the parking lot. An expensive BMW that probably cost more than David made in 6 months. David looked up Robert online. Dr. Robert Chin, cardiovascular surgeon at the city's best hospital. Graduated from Harvard Medical School. Volunteer work with children's charities. Recently widowed after 30 years of marriage. The man was perfect. Successful, kind, handsome in a distinguished way. Everything David wasn't. David started following them. Not in a stalking way, he told himself. He just wanted to understand what she saw in Robert. He needed to know what he was competing against. They went to art galleries and classical concerts. Things his ex-wife had always wanted to do but David had found boring. They held hands while walking through the park. They fed ducks by the pond. They looked like teenagers in love. The worst part was watching how Robert treated her. He opened every door. He helped her with her coat. He listened when she talked, really listened like her words were the most important thing in the world. When she pointed out flowers or birds or interesting architecture, he looked where she pointed and asked questions. David had stopped doing those things years ago. He couldn't remember when, but somewhere along the way, he had stopped seeing his wife as a person worth impressing. One evening, David followed them to a bookstore. Through the window, he watched Robert buy her a stack of art books. She hugged him right there in the store, standing on her toes to kiss his cheek. Robert's face lit up like Christmas morning. David remembered when his ex-wife used to hug him like that. When she used to look at him with that same adoration. He had thrown it all away for what? A few months of feeling young again? That night, David called his ex-wife. She answered on the third ring. Hello, David. I need to see you. Please. Just to talk. She sighed. David, we've been through this. I know. But I can't let this go. I can't accept that we're really over. We are really over. Because of him? Because of Robert? No. Because of you. Because of us. Because we don't work anymore. We could work. I could change. I have changed. Have you? Or are you just panicking because you see me with someone else? David was quiet because she was right. David, I cared about you for 15 years. I worried about your health, your happiness, your career. I put your needs before mine so many times I forgot what my needs even were. I don't want to do that anymore. I wouldn't ask you to. Yes, you would. Because that's who you are. You need to be the center of someone's universe. Robert doesn't need that. He wants a partner, not a servant. I want a partner too. No, you don't. You want someone who makes you feel important without requiring you to do the same for them. You want someone who gives without expecting to receive. David felt angry because she was right and the truth hurt. So you're just going to marry him? The words came out before he could stop them. There was a long pause. Maybe, she said finally. If he asks. And if he does ask? I'll probably say yes. David felt like he couldn't breathe. You'd marry him after 8 months when you knew me for 20 years? I knew the man you used to be 20 years ago. The man you became isn't someone I want to marry again. She hung up. David sat in his empty house and realized he had lost her completely. Not just lost her, he had driven her away. He had taken her love and twisted it into something that hurt her. He had made her small when he should have helped her grow. Now she was growing anyway just without him. David threw himself into work, taking every case that came his way. If he stayed busy enough, he could almost forget about the mess he had made of his life. Almost. But even his work felt empty now. He had built his practice to provide for his family. Now his children were adults who barely called, and his ex-wife was being provided for by someone else. Someone better. 3 weeks after their last phone call, David was leaving the courthouse when he saw them again. His ex-wife and Robert were coming out of the jewelry store across the street. She was looking down at her left hand, and even from a distance, David could see her smile. His heart stopped. Robert had proposed. She was engaged. David stood frozen on the courthouse steps, watching the woman he had thrown away celebrate her engagement to another man. Robert lifted her off her feet and spun her around. People on the sidewalk smiled at them, strangers caught up in their obvious joy. David felt nauseous. That night he called his son. "Dad? It's kind of late." "I know. I heard about your mother. The engagement." His son was quiet for a moment. "She called you?" "No. I saw them coming out of the jewelry store." "You were watching them?" David realized how that sounded. "I was leaving the courthouse. I saw them by accident." "Dad, you can't keep doing this to yourself." "Doing what?" "Torturing yourself. Mom is happy. Really happy. You should be glad for her." "I am glad," David lied. "When's the wedding?" "They haven't set a date yet. Probably next spring." David closed his eyes. "Next spring. Less than a year away. Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine. I should go." "Wait, Dad. I know this is hard, but you need to move on. Find someone who makes you happy." "Your mother made me happy." "No, she didn't. Not at the end. You guys were miserable together. I hated coming home because the tension was so thick. You barely talked to each other. You criticized everything she did. She walked on eggshells around you." David wanted to argue, but he couldn't. His son was right. "Robert makes her laugh," his son continued. "Like really laugh. Deep belly laughs. I don't remember you ever making her laugh like that." "I used to. Maybe. But not for a long time." After they hung up, David sat in his study with a bottle of whiskey. He looked at the photos on his desk. Professional headshots, pictures with clients, awards from the Bar Association. Nothing personal. When had his life become so empty? He opened his laptop and started typing an email to his ex-wife. Then deleted it. Started again. Deleted it again. He must have written and deleted 20 different messages before finally settling on something simple. "I heard about your engagement. Congratulations. You deserve to be happy." He sent it before he could change his mind. She replied an hour later. "Thank you. That means a lot." David stared at her response for a long time. She was being kind. Even after everything he had put her through, she was still kind to him. It made him hate himself even more. The next morning, David woke up on his study floor with an empty whiskey bottle beside him. His head felt like it was splitting open. He called in sick and spent the day drinking coffee and trying to figure out what to do with his life. He could keep wallowing. He could drink himself into oblivion. He could try to sabotage his ex-wife's relationship. Or he could try to become the man she deserved to marry, even if it was too late for him to be that man for her. David chose the last option. He started with therapy. Dr. Sarah Martinez was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who didn't let him make excuses for his behavior. "You want to know why you cheated on your wife?" she asked during their third session. "Because I was selfish and stupid?" "That's part of it. But the deeper reason is that you stopped doing the work." "What work?" "The work of loving someone. Marriage isn't a destination, David. It's a journey. Every day you have to choose to love your partner. You have to choose to see them, really see them. You have to choose to put their needs alongside your own." "I thought I was doing that." "No, you thought love should be effortless. When it started requiring effort, you decided the marriage was broken instead of realizing you had stopped trying." Dr. Martinez made him keep a journal. She made him write down 3 things he appreciated about his ex-wife every day. Things he had taken for granted during their marriage. The way she remembered everyone's favorite foods and cooked them when they visited. How she never complained when he worked late, even though it meant she ate dinner alone. The way she supported his career by managing everything at home so he could focus on work. How she made their house feel warm and welcoming for their children's friends. The way she never spoke badly about him to their kids, even when he probably deserved it. Her patience with his mother, who had never liked her but whom she had cared for during her final illness anyway. The list went on and on. Pages and pages of kindnesses he had ignored while focusing on her flaws. "Why are you doing this?" Dr. Martinez asked after reading his journal. "Because you told me to." "No. Why are you really doing this?" David thought about it. "Because I want to understand what I lost." "And what did you lose?" "Everything that mattered." Dr. Martinez nodded. "Now we're getting somewhere." The therapy helped, but it didn't make the pain go away. If anything, understanding his mistakes made them hurt more. He had been given something precious and broken it through neglect and selfishness. Meanwhile, his ex-wife's happiness seemed to grow every day. David heard about it through their children. Robert had taken her to Paris for their engagement trip. She had started selling her paintings at a local gallery. She was taking French cooking classes. She had joined a book club and made new friends. Everything she had wanted to do during their marriage but never had the time or confidence to try. David realized Robert wasn't just loving her, he was helping her become the person she was meant to be. David had held her back. Not intentionally, but through his constant need to be the center of attention. His need for her to revolve around him instead of finding her own orbit. 6 months into therapy, Dr. Martinez asked him a question that changed everything. What would you do if you could go back and change things? I'd appreciate her more. I'd support her dreams. I'd be a better husband. No, David. If you could go back, what would you do? David thought harder. I'd let her go sooner. Why? Because she deserves better than what I gave her. She deserves someone who sees her worth from the beginning. Someone who doesn't have to lose her to realize what he had. Dr. Martinez smiled. That's the first truly unselfish thing you've said about your ex-wife. David felt something shift inside him. A weight lifting. For the first time since seeing her with Robert, he felt something other than jealousy and regret. He felt love. Real love. The kind that wants the other person to be happy, even if it means being happy without you. David's perspective began to change gradually. Instead of driving by his ex-wife's apartment, he started volunteering at the animal shelter where she had always wanted to volunteer but never had time because she was too busy taking care of his needs. Instead of following her and Robert, he started taking painting classes at the same community college where she studied art. Not to run into her, but to understand what brought her joy. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, he started working on becoming someone worth knowing. The changes weren't dramatic or sudden. David was still sad. He still missed what he had lost. But slowly, the sharp edge of his pain began to soften into something more manageable. His therapist helped him understand that he needed to grieve his marriage properly. He had never really processed the end of it because he had immediately jumped into a relationship with Ashley. Now he had to feel all the emotions he had been avoiding. It's okay to be sad, Dr. Martinez told him. You lost something important. But you also need to take responsibility for why you lost it. David wrote letters to his ex-wife that he never sent. Letters apologizing for his selfishness. Letters thanking her for the years of love she had given him. Letters wishing her happiness with Robert. Writing the letters helped him realize something important. He didn't just want her back because he was lonely or because another man had her. He wanted her back because he finally understood what he had lost. But understanding what he had lost also meant understanding why he didn't deserve to get it back. David started making other changes too. He reached out to his children more often, but not to talk about their mother. He asked about their lives, their jobs, their dreams. He learned things about them he had never known because he had been too focused on himself to really listen. His daughter was thinking about going back to school for her master's degree. His son was considering starting his own business but was afraid to take the risk. David offered support and encouragement instead of just advice. He learned to listen more and talk less. Dad, you seem different, his daughter said during one of their weekly phone calls. Different how? I don't know. Calmer maybe? Less intense. David smiled. I'm working on some things. Good for you. It's nice to talk to you without feeling like I'm being interrogated about Mom. David winced. He hadn't realized he had been so obvious. I'm sorry about that. Your mother's happiness isn't your responsibility to report on. It's okay. I get it. Change is hard. A few weeks later, David ran into Robert at the grocery store. David's first instinct was to avoid him, but something made him approach instead. Robert. The older man turned, and David saw a flicker of wariness in his eyes. David. Hello. I wanted to thank you, David said. Robert looked surprised. Thank me? For making her happy. She deserves that. Robert studied David's face carefully. She does. I also wanted to apologize. If I've made things awkward or uncomfortable for either of you. I know I haven't handled the divorce well. Divorce is never easy, Robert said diplomatically. No, but I made it harder than it needed to be. For everyone. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then Robert surprised David by speaking first. She speaks well of you, you know. When she talks about the children or your life together. She doesn't hold grudges. She should. I gave her plenty of reasons to. Robert nodded slowly. We all make mistakes. The measure of a man is what he does after he recognizes them. What would you do? David asked suddenly. If you were me? Robert considered the question seriously. I'd focus on being the best father and grandfather I could be. I'd find ways to contribute to the world that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. And I'd forgive myself eventually because carrying guilt forever helps no one. David felt tears prick his eyes. You're a good man. I try to be. So do you, I think. They shook hands before parting ways. David went home feeling lighter than he had in months. That night he called his ex-wife. David? Is everything okay? I'm fine. I just wanted to tell you something. Okay. I met Robert today. At the store. She was quiet, probably wondering if there had been a confrontation. He's a good man, David continued. You chose well. David. I mean it. I can see why you love him. He makes you better. That's what love should do. She was quiet for a long moment. Thank you for saying that. I also wanted to apologize. Really apologize. Not for the divorce, we both know that needed to happen. But for how I treated you before it. For making you feel small. For taking your love for granted. For not seeing what an amazing woman I married. He heard her sniffle and realized she was crying. You don't have to say anything, he continued. I just needed you to know that I understand now. What I lost. What I threw away. And I'm sorry it took losing you for me to see it. David, she said softly, that means more to me than you know. I want you to be happy. Really happy. And I can see that you are. I am. Good. You deserve it. You deserved it all along. After they hung up, David felt something he hadn't felt in years. He poured himself a glass of wine, just one, and sat on his back porch. The garden was still overgrown, but tomorrow he would start working on it. Not to impress anyone or to recreate what his ex-wife had built. Just because it needed tending and he had time to tend it. For the first time since his divorce, David felt like he might be okay. Spring arrived early that year and with it came the wedding invitations. David stared at the elegant cream envelope with his name written in beautiful calligraphy. Inside was an invitation to his ex-wife's wedding to Robert, set for the first Saturday in May. David's first reaction was pain. Sharp and immediate. But it passed quickly, replaced by something unexpected. Pride. She had invited him to her wedding. After everything he had put her through, she still cared enough about their shared history to include him in this moment. He RSVP'd yes immediately. The next few weeks passed quickly. David bought a new suit, got a haircut, and prepared himself mentally to watch the woman he had loved marry someone else. It wasn't easy, but he had learned to sit with difficult emotions instead of running from them. His children were surprised by his calm acceptance. Are you sure you're okay with this? His daughter asked over lunch. I'm sure. Your mother deserves a beautiful wedding day. I won't be the one to ruin it. But doesn't it hurt? David considered the question honestly. Yes, but not in the way it used to. Now it hurts like missing someone you love, not like losing something you own. His daughter looked confused by the distinction, but David understood it perfectly. For most of his marriage he had treated his wife like a possession. Something that belonged to him, existed for him, reflected on him. Now he was learning to love her as a separate person with her own needs and dreams. The week before the wedding, David made a decision that surprised even him. He called Robert. David? Is everything all right? Everything's fine. I wondered if we could meet for coffee. Before the wedding. Robert was quiet for a moment. Of course. When works for you. They met at a quiet cafe downtown. Robert looked nervous, probably expecting some kind of dramatic confrontation. David understood his concern. I want to give you something, David said, pulling out a small wrapped box. Robert looked confused but accepted it. Inside was a simple gold bracelet with a small charm. It was her grandmother's, David explained. She wore it on our wedding day for her, something old. I kept it after the divorce, which wasn't fair. She should have it for your wedding. Robert held the bracelet carefully. This is very thoughtful. There's something else. I know this might sound strange, but I want to tell you about her. Things that might not come up naturally. Things that make her happy. Robert leaned forward, listening intently. She hates roses but loves wildflowers. She cries at sad commercials but claims she doesn't. She's afraid of spiders but will rescue them instead of killing them. She makes the best chocolate chip cookies in the world, but only when she's happy. When she's sad, she burns everything. Robert smiled. She made me cookies last week. They were perfect. Good. That means she's really happy. David paused, then continued. She loves thunderstorms. She'll sit by the window and watch them for hours. She has a scar on her left shoulder from when she fell off her bike as a kid. She's self-conscious about it, but it's shaped like a crescent moon and it's actually beautiful. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to love her better than I did. I want you to see all the little things that make her special. I want you to notice when she gets quiet because she's thinking about something important. I want you to remember that she gives her whole heart when she loves someone, and that heart has been broken before. Robert's eyes were serious. I would never hurt her. I know. I can see it in how you look at her. But David, loving someone isn't just about not hurting them. It's about helping them grow. It's about seeing who they could become and supporting that person. Is that what you wish you had done? David nodded. Among other things. I made her smaller so I could feel bigger. Don't do that. Robert reached across the table and shook David's hand. Thank you. For trusting me with this. And for trusting me with her. Take care of her dreams, David said. She has so many dreams she never got to chase. That conversation marked a turning point for David. He realized he could choose what his divorce meant. He could let it be a story of failure and regret, or he could let it be a story of growth and second chances. Not second chances for him and his ex-wife, but second chances for both of them to find the happiness they deserved. The day before the wedding, David's ex-wife called him. I wanted to thank you, she said, for the bracelet. Robert told me you gave it to him. It belongs with you. And for what you told him. About me. David felt embarrassed. I hope I didn't overstep. You didn't? It was sweet. It made me realize something. What's that? You did see me, David. During our marriage. Maybe not at the end, but you saw me once. The real me. David felt tears threaten. I saw you. I just forgot to keep looking. We both made mistakes. I stopped showing you who I was too. I got tired of feeling like I had to earn your attention. You never had to earn anything. I was just too stupid to realize what I had. We weren't right for each other anymore. But we were right once. That counts for something. It counts for everything, David said softly. I'm glad you're coming tomorrow. Me too. David? I hope you find someone who sees you the way Robert sees me. You deserve that too. After she hung up, David sat in his garden and looked at the flowers he had planted. They weren't as beautiful as the ones his ex-wife had grown, but they were his. He was learning to create beauty instead of just appreciating what others created. Tomorrow he would watch the woman he had loved marry someone else. It would hurt, but it would also be beautiful. He would witness her happiness, and that happiness would be partly his gift to her. By letting her go, by learning to love her without possessing her, he had helped make her joy possible. That night, David slept peacefully for the first time in 2 years. The wedding was perfect. David had known it would be because his ex-wife had always been good at creating beautiful moments. But seeing her in her wedding dress, radiant with happiness, still took his breath away. She had chosen a simple but elegant gown that made her look like a goddess. Her hair was swept up with small white flowers woven through it. She carried wildflowers instead of roses, just as David had told Robert she would prefer. She was absolutely glowing. David sat in the back with their children and grandchildren. He watched Robert's face as his bride walked down the aisle, and he saw the same wonder he had felt 23 years ago when he had married her. The difference was that Robert's wonder looked like it would last forever. The ceremony was small and intimate, held in the garden of a historic mansion. Robert had written his own vows, and David found himself wiping away tears as he listened. Sarah, Robert said, and David realized he had never thought of his ex-wife as anything but his ex-wife, or the mother of his children. She had a name. She was a whole person separate from her relationship to him. You came into my life when I thought love was behind me. You taught me that it's never too late for a new beginning. You taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about seeing someone clearly and choosing to love everything you see. David felt those words hit him like a physical blow. That was exactly what he had failed to do. Robert continued, I promise to support your dreams, even the ones you haven't told me about yet. I promise to see you, really see you, every day for the rest of our lives. I promise to love not just who you are, but who you're becoming. When it was Sarah's turn, she spoke directly from her heart without notes. Robert, you gave me back myself. You helped me remember that I was more than just a wife and mother. I was an artist, a dreamer, a woman with my own hopes and fears. You loved all of those parts of me, even the ones I had forgotten existed. David closed his eyes, remembering how he had slowly stripped away those parts of her, making her world smaller and smaller until it revolved entirely around him and their children. I promise to keep growing with you instead of just growing old. I promise to choose love every day even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. When they kissed as husband and wife, David felt something unexpected. Relief. She was safe now. She was cherished. She would never again have to wonder if she was enough because Robert clearly thought she was everything. At the reception, David stayed for the dinner but planned to leave before the dancing started. He didn't trust himself to watch them dance together. But as he was preparing to go, Sarah approached his table. You're leaving already? I thought it would be best. Dance with me first? David stared at her. Sarah, I don't think that's appropriate. One dance. For old time's sake. To say goodbye properly. David looked around and saw Robert watching them. The older man nodded encouragingly. Whatever conversation Robert and Sarah had had about this moment, he was okay with it. David took her hand and led her to the dance floor. The band was playing something slow and romantic. They moved together easily, muscle memory from 20 years of dancing at other people's weddings. You look beautiful, David said softly. Thank you. You look good too. Different. Peaceful. I feel different. I'm glad. They danced in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Sarah spoke again. I forgive you, for everything. I want you to forgive yourself too. David felt tears burn his eyes. I don't know if I can. You have to. Carrying that guilt won't change anything. It won't bring us back together and it won't make you a better person. Only forgiving yourself can do that. How can you be so kind to me after everything I put you through? Sarah smiled, and it was the same gentle smile she had given him for 15 years of marriage. Because once upon a time, you were the love of my life. That has to count for something. The song ended and David stepped back. Sarah reached up and kissed his cheek softly. Be happy, David. Find someone who makes you want to be your best self. You deserve that. So do you? And you found it. Sarah glanced over at Robert, who was watching them with patient understanding. Yes, I did. David left the reception with a heart that was both broken and healed. Broken because he was saying goodbye to a dream that could never be reality. Healed because he finally understood what love really meant. Driving home, David thought about what Sarah had said about forgiveness. She was right. He needed to forgive himself not because he deserved it, but because holding on to guilt was just another form of selfishness. It kept him focused on his own pain instead of learning from his mistakes. That night, David wrote one last letter to Sarah. This one he planned to send. Dear Sarah, thank you for today. Thank you for letting me be part of your happiness instead of shutting me out because of my mistakes. Thank you for the dance, for the forgiveness, and for showing me what grace looks like. Watching you marry Robert was one of the hardest and most beautiful things I've ever experienced. Hard because I finally understood what I lost. Beautiful because I could see how much you deserve the love he gives you. I want you to know that I'm okay. Really okay. For the first time in years, I'm not angry or bitter or desperate. I'm sad sometimes, but it's a clean sadness. Like missing something precious instead of resenting something stolen. I'm going to take your advice about forgiving myself. I'm going to work on becoming someone worthy of the love you once gave me, even if I never get the chance to love someone that way again. Be happy, Sarah. Be gloriously, completely happy. You've earned it. With love and respect, David. He mailed the letter the next morning, then went to work in his garden. The roses he had planted were starting to bloom. They weren't as perfect as the ones Sarah used to grow, but they were his own creation. That had to be enough. 6 months after the wedding, David's life had settled into a new routine. He worked less and lived more. He had dinner with his children once a week. He volunteered at the animal shelter every Saturday morning. He took a cooking class and discovered he actually enjoyed making meals instead of just eating them. Most importantly, he had learned to be alone without being lonely. The house that had felt like a mausoleum now felt like a home again. He had redecorated it slowly, removing the pieces that reminded him too much of his marriage and replacing them with things that reflected who he was becoming. David was in his garden one October morning when his phone rang. It was his daughter. Dad, are you sitting down? I'm kneeling in the dirt planting bulbs. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Something's right. Really right. David sat back on his heels. Tell me. Mom's pregnant. David felt the world tilt. What? She's pregnant. 12 weeks. They just told the family last night. David couldn't speak. His ex-wife was 44 years old. Robert was 52. They were having a baby. Dad? Are you there? I'm here. I'm just surprised. I know. We all are. But they're so happy, Dad. I've never seen Mom so excited about anything. David tried to process this information. Sarah was going to have another baby. With Robert, they were starting a family together. How are you feeling about it? His daughter asked carefully. David considered the question honestly. How was he feeling? Shocked, certainly. A little jealous that Robert got to experience having a child with Sarah when their own children were grown. But underneath those feelings was something else. Joy. He was happy for them. I think it's wonderful, he said, and meant it. Really? Really? Your mother always wanted more children. I was the one who said 2 was enough. That was true. After their son was born, Sarah had talked about having another baby. David had been focused on his career and worried about money. He had convinced her to wait, then convinced her they were too old, then convinced her their family was complete. Another dream of hers he had crushed without even realizing it. She's going to be a great mother, David said. Again. She is. And Robert is already buying baby books and researching cribs. He's like a kid at Christmas. David smiled despite himself. He could picture Robert researching everything obsessively, wanting to be the perfect father. The man who had given Sarah art supplies would probably buy their baby the best of everything. Give them my congratulations, David said. You could give them yourself. They're having a little celebration dinner this weekend. Family only. But Dad, you're still family? David felt his throat tighten. After everything, they still considered him family. I don't want to impose. You wouldn't be. Mom specifically asked me to invite you. That evening David called Sarah. She answered on the second ring, sounding breathless and happy. David, did you hear our news? I did. Congratulations. I'm so happy for you both. Thank you. I know it must be strange for you. It's not strange. It's wonderful. You always wanted another baby. Sarah was quiet for a moment. You remember that? I remember a lot of things I wish I had paid attention to at the time. This wasn't planned, you know. We thought we were too old. But apparently life had other ideas. David could hear the joy in her voice. The wonder. He remembered that feeling from when she was pregnant with their children. The excitement and terror and overwhelming love. How are you feeling? Tired, nauseous, terrified, ecstatic. All at the same time. David laughed. That sounds about right. Will you come to dinner on Saturday? I know it might be awkward, but the kids really want you there. And so do I. Are you sure? I'm sure. You're part of our family's story, David. The good parts and the bad parts. This baby will have older siblings who are your children too. It all connects. Saturday night, David stood outside Robert and Sarah's house holding a gift bag and trying to calm his nerves. Through the window, he could see his children and grandchildren laughing around the dinner table. Sarah was glowing, her hand resting protectively on her small bump. Robert had his arm around her chair, looking proud and amazed. David knocked and Robert opened the door. David, come in, come in. The house was warm and welcoming, filled with the smell of Sarah's cooking and the sound of family laughter. David was struck by how different this felt from the stilted dinners at the end of his marriage, when conversation had been forced and tension filled every silence. Uncle David, his grandson ran up to hug him. Did you hear? Aunt Sarah is having a baby. David smiled at the title. Somewhere along the way, his children had started referring to Sarah and Robert as aunt and uncle to their kids. It created a family structure that included everyone without awkwardness. I heard. Are you excited to have another cousin? Yeah. I hope it's a boy so I can teach him about baseball. Throughout dinner, David watched Sarah and Robert together. They were affectionate but not overly so, considering the company. Robert made sure Sarah ate enough and didn't overdo it. Sarah glowed with contentment, laughing easily and often. This was what happiness looked like. This was what David had never been able to give her, despite 15 years of trying. After dinner, while the others were in the living room, David found himself alone in the kitchen with Sarah. She was putting dishes in the dishwasher, moving carefully. Let me help with that, he said. I've got it. But thank you. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Sarah spoke. I was worried about how you'd react to the news. Why? I don't know. I guess I thought it might be hard for you. Another person loving Robert's baby. Another step away from our old life. David considered this. It is another step away. But that's not a bad thing anymore. I'm not trying to get back to our old life. I'm trying to build a new one. And how's that going? Better than I expected. I'm learning to be happy alone. Really happy, not just pretending. Sarah smiled. Good. You deserve happiness too. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you scared? Having a baby at 44? Sarah's hand went to her stomach. Terrified, but also excited. I thought this chance was gone forever. When the doctor told us, I cried for an hour. Happy tears? The happiest. Robert cried too. We both thought we were too old for this kind of surprise. David felt a pang of something that wasn't quite jealousy. Longing maybe. He would never have another chance at this kind of beginning. But that was okay. His children were grown and wonderful. His grandchildren adored him. He had love in his life, even if it wasn't romantic love. You'll be a wonderful mother, he said. Again. I hope so. It's been a long time since I had a baby. It's like riding a bike. You never forget. Sarah laughed. That's what Robert says. Although he's reading every parenting book ever written just in case. Of course he is. He's going to be such a good father. He talks to my belly every night. Tells the baby about his day, about how much he loves mommy, about all the things they're going to do together. David felt his chest tighten with emotion. That's beautiful. It is. I never thought I'd have this again. A partner who's truly excited about every part of our life together. The words weren't meant to hurt, but they did. Because David knew he had never been that partner for her. Even when their children were born, he had been excited but also worried about money, career, responsibility. He had never just been purely joyful about creating life with the woman he loved. I'm glad you found him, David said, and meant it completely. Later, as David was leaving, Sarah walked him to his car. Thank you for coming tonight. It meant a lot to have you here. Thank you for including me. I know it would be easier not to. Your family, David. Complicated family, but family nonetheless. David got in his car but rolled down the window. Sarah? When the baby comes, if you need anything. I know I don't have the right to offer, but if you need help or support or just someone to hold the baby so you can shower, I'm here. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. That means more than you know. Driving home, David realized something had shifted again. For months, he had been learning to let go of Sarah. Tonight, he had learned something different. He had learned to love her in a new way. Not as an ex-husband who wanted her back, but as someone who genuinely wanted her happiness and was willing to support it however he could. It felt like the final piece of healing he had been waiting for without knowing it. Winter passed quietly. David heard updates about Sarah's pregnancy through their children and the occasional text message. She was doing well though tired. Robert was taking excellent care of her. They had decided not to find out the baby's gender, wanting to be surprised. David found himself thinking about the baby more than he expected. Not with jealousy, but with genuine anticipation. This child would be his children's half-sibling. His grandchildren's aunt or uncle. Part of the extended family that his divorce had created but not destroyed. In February, David did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He started dating. Her name was Linda, and she was a veterinarian at the animal shelter where he volunteered. She was 51, divorced for 3 years, with grown children of her own. She was kind but not needy, intelligent but not intimidating, attractive but not in a way that made him feel like he was trying to recapture his youth. Most importantly, she made him laugh. Their first date was coffee after a volunteer shift. It was easy and comfortable, with none of the desperation that had marked his relationship with Ashley. David found himself genuinely interested in Linda's stories about her work, her kids, her struggles after her own divorce. Why did your marriage end? She asked over their second cup of coffee. David had practiced this answer with his therapist. We grew apart. I got selfish and stopped putting in effort. She deserved better than what I was giving her. That's very honest. I learned the hard way that honesty is important. Are you over her? Your ex-wife. David considered the question carefully. I'll always love her. She's the mother of my children, and we shared 15 good years before the bad ones. But I'm not in love with her anymore. There's a difference. Linda nodded. I understand that. I feel the same way about my ex-husband. They talked for 3 hours that first day. When David walked Linda to her car, she turned to him with a smile. This was nice. I'd like to do it again. So would I. Their relationship developed slowly, without drama or complications. Linda had her own life, her own interests, her own friends. She didn't expect David to be her whole world, and she wasn't trying to be his. They complemented each other instead of consuming each other. David told Linda about Sarah's pregnancy on their 4th date. How do you feel about that? Linda asked. Happy for them. It's what she always wanted. But not weird for you? A little weird, David admitted. But not in a bad way. More like, it's proof that life keeps moving forward. That good things can happen even after bad things. Linda smiled. You're further along in your healing than most divorced men I've met. Therapy helps. So does accepting responsibility for your mistakes. Not everyone is capable of that. I had to be. I lost everything that mattered because I wasn't capable of it the first time around. In March, David introduced Linda to his children. They liked her immediately, which both surprised and relieved him. His daughter pulled him aside after dinner. She's really nice, Dad. Different from Ashley. Very different. She makes you seem more like yourself. Like who you used to be before everything got complicated. David hugged his daughter. I'm trying to be better than who I used to be. I think you're succeeding. A week later, Sarah went into labor 3 weeks early. David got the call at 2 in the morning from his son. Dad, it's happening. Mom's at the hospital. The baby's coming. David sat up in bed, instantly awake. Is she okay? She's fine. Robert's with her. We're all heading to the hospital now. Do you want me to come? There was a pause. Do you want to come? David thought about it. Did he want to be there when Sarah gave birth to another man's child? The answer surprised him. Yes, I do. Then come. Room 314 at St. Mary's. David threw on clothes and drove to the hospital. The waiting room was full of family. His children, his grandchildren, Robert's adult children from his first marriage, various cousins and friends. Everyone was excited and nervous. Robert appeared in scrubs, looking exhausted but ecstatic. It's a girl, he announced. 8 pounds 2 ounces. Sarah's doing great. The room erupted in cheers and congratulations. David hung back, not sure what his role was in this moment. But Robert spotted him and came over. Thank you for coming, Robert said, shaking his hand. Thank you for letting me be here. Sarah asked for you specifically. She said the family wouldn't be complete without you. David felt his eyes water. After everything he had put her through, Sarah still considered him family. An hour later they were allowed to visit 2 at a time. David waited until everyone else had gone, then knocked softly on Sarah's door. Come in, she called. Sarah was sitting up in bed, glowing despite her exhaustion. In her arms was the tiniest, most perfect baby David had ever seen. Robert sat beside the bed, looking like he might burst with pride and joy. David, Sarah said softly. Meet Emma Rose. David approached the bed carefully. The baby was beautiful, with a cap of dark hair and perfect little features. She was sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms. She's gorgeous, David said and meant it. Would you like to hold her? Sarah asked. David looked at Robert, who nodded encouragingly. Sarah carefully transferred the baby to David's arms. Emma stirred slightly but didn't wake. Holding Sarah's daughter, David felt something unexpected. Not jealousy or regret but pure joy. This tiny person was part of his extended family. His children's sister. His grandchildren's aunt. She was beautiful and loved and wanted, and that was all that mattered. She's perfect, David whispered. Robert's already planning her college fund, Sarah said with a tired laugh. And her wedding, Robert added. I figure I have 18 years to save up and prepare to hate whatever boy she brings home. David laughed. It goes by faster than you think. He handed Emma back to Sarah, who gazed down at her daughter with wonder. Thank you for being here, Sarah said. It means a lot that you wanted to be part of this. Thank you for letting me be part of it. David stayed for a few more minutes, then left the new family to rest. In the hospital parking lot he called Linda. How did it go? She asked. It was beautiful. Complicated, but beautiful. Are you okay? David thought about the question. I'm more than okay. I'm grateful. Grateful? That I got to be there. That Sarah still considers me family. That something so good could come from something that started so badly. You sound different. Happy. I'm happy. Really, truly happy. Driving home, David realized Linda was right. He was different. The man who had destroyed his marriage would have been consumed with jealousy tonight. He would have made Sarah's joy about his own pain. Instead, he had been able to celebrate with her family because he had learned to love without possessing. It had taken him 2 years to get to this point. 2 years of therapy, self-reflection, and hard work to become someone capable of loving unselfishly. But sitting in that hospital room, holding Sarah's daughter and seeing her happiness, David knew it had been worth every difficult moment. He was finally free. Free from resentment, from regret, from the desperate need to undo what couldn't be undone. He was free to love the people in his life without conditions, without expectations, without the need to own their hearts. For the first time since his divorce, David felt like he had something to offer someone. Not his neediness or his desperation or his guilt, but his genuine affection and support. He had something to give Linda that wasn't poisoned by his past mistakes. He was ready to love again. Not to replace what he had lost, but to build something new with the man he had become. 1 year later, David stood in his garden picking roses for Linda's birthday. The garden was thriving now, full of flowers he had chosen and planted himself. It was different from the garden Sarah had created, but it was beautiful in its own way. Linda was coming for dinner, and David had spent the afternoon cooking her favorite meal. He had learned to cook over the past year, taking classes and practicing until he could create something worthy of someone he cared about. It was a small thing, but it represented something larger: his willingness to put effort into making someone else happy. Their relationship had grown steadily over the past year. They had taken trips together, met each other's families, integrated their separate lives in healthy ways. David had learned to be a partner instead of the center of someone's universe. Linda had her own career, her own friends, her own interests, and David supported all of them without feeling threatened. Last month they had talked about moving in together. Not because they were desperate or lonely, but because they were ready to build something together. They were taking it slowly, making sure they were choosing each other for the right reasons. David's phone rang as he was arranging the roses in a vase. It was Sarah. "I hope I'm not bothering you," she said. "I know you have plans tonight." "You're never bothering me. What's up?" Emma said her first word yesterday. David smiled. Sarah called him every few weeks with updates about Emma's milestones. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to share them with someone who understood the joy of watching a child grow. "What did she say?" "Dada. Robert cried for 10 minutes. David laughed. "Of course he did. That man cries at commercial. Happy tears. Always happy tears." David could hear Emma babbling in the background. At 13 months old, she was walking and getting into everything. Sarah sent him pictures occasionally, and David kept them on his phone to show Linda and anyone else who would listen. "How are you doing?" Sarah asked. "Linda's birthday is today, right?" David was touched that she remembered. "Tonight's dinner is in an hour. I'm making her favorite chicken marsala. Look at you becoming a chef. Linda's worth the effort." "She is. I really like her, David. She's good for you." David and Linda had had dinner with Sarah and Robert several times over the past year. The four of them got along surprisingly well, perhaps because none of them were trying to compete or prove anything. They were just four adults who cared about each other's happiness. "She makes me want to be better," David said. "That's what love should do." After they hung up, David thought about how strange and wonderful his life had become. His ex-wife called to share good news. His children visited regularly and brought their kids to play in his garden. He had a girlfriend who made him laugh and challenged him to grow. He had built a life he was proud of from the ashes of his mistakes. It wasn't the life he had planned. It was better. Linda arrived right on time, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the dress David had complimented the first time he saw her in it. "Happy birthday, beautiful," he said, kissing her cheek and handing her the roses. "These are gorgeous. From your garden? Picked this afternoon." Linda buried her face in the flowers. "They smell amazing. Thank you." Over dinner, they talked about Linda's work, a trip they were planning to visit her daughter in California, and David's latest volunteer project at the shelter. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and comfortable silences. "I have something for you," David said after they finished eating. He pulled out a small wrapped box. Linda opened it carefully, revealing a simple silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a paw print. "I know you're not much for fancy jewelry," David said, "but I thought this was perfect for you." Linda's eyes filled with tears as she examined the necklace. "It's beautiful. Help me put it on." David fastened the necklace around her neck, then kissed the spot where the clasp rested. "Perfect. I have something for you too," Linda said, reaching into her purse. She handed him an envelope. Inside was a card with a picture of a puppy on the front. "Open it," she said. Inside, Linda had written, "David, you've taught me that it's never too late for a new beginning. I love the man you've become and I love the life we're building together. Will you make it official and move in with me?" David looked up at her, surprised. "Are you proposing to me?" "I'm proposing that we take the next step. I'm ready if you are." David felt his heart race. Not with panic or fear, but with excitement. He was ready. More than ready. "Yes," he said, pulling her into his arms. "Absolutely yes." They held each other for a long moment, both laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you," David said, meaning it in a way he hadn't understood before. Not desperate love or possessive love, but the kind of love that wanted the other person to flourish. "I love you too," Linda replied. All of you. Even the broken parts that taught you how to be whole. Later that evening, as they sat on David's back porch planning their future together, David's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Saw on Emma's baby monitor that she took 3 steps today. Robert missed it because he was at work, but I got it on video. Hope your dinner with Linda was wonderful. You deserve all the happiness in the world. David showed the message to Linda, who smiled. She's a good woman. She is. I was too stupid to see it when it mattered. But you see it now. That's what matters. David looked around his garden, at the house he had made into a home, at the woman beside him who loved him not despite his flaws but because he had learned from them. His life looked nothing like what he had imagined it would be 3 years ago, and he was grateful for that. He had lost everything that he thought defined him, his marriage, his sense of himself as a good husband, his belief that he deserved love without earning it. In losing those things he had found something better. He had found out who he really was when stripped of his selfishness and pride. The man he had become was someone worth loving. Someone capable of loving others well. Someone who could watch his ex-wife's happiness without resentment, support his children without expecting praise, and love a new woman without trying to possess her. David's phone rang. It was his son. Dad, I wanted to tell you something before you hear it from someone else. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Something's right. I asked Jessica to marry me tonight. She said yes. David felt pure joy flood through him. His son was getting married. His family was growing again. That's wonderful. I'm so happy for you both. Thanks, Dad. We want you to walk Jessica down the aisle. Her father passed away last year, and she said you've been like a father to her. David felt tears prick his eyes. I'd be honored. There's something else. We want to ask Sarah and Robert to be in the wedding party too. Jessica loves Sarah, and Robert has been like a mentor to me. Is that okay with you? 3 years ago, the idea of his ex-wife and her new husband being part of his son's wedding would have destroyed David. Now it filled him with warmth. It's more than okay. It's perfect. We're all family. After he hung up, Linda squeezed his hand. Good news? The best news. My son is getting married and he wants all of us to be part of it. Me, Sarah, Robert, you if you're willing. I'd love to be there. David looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. 3 years ago, he had been a broken man sitting in this same spot, drinking too much and drowning in regret. He had thought his life was over because his marriage had ended. Now he understood that his life had actually begun the day his marriage ended. Not because the marriage was bad, but because losing it had forced him to become someone better. Someone capable of real love instead of selfish need. His ex-wife had found the love she deserved with Robert. His children were building their own happy lives. He had found love again with Linda, but this time he was worthy of it. The revenge his ex-wife had gotten wasn't dramatic or cruel. She hadn't destroyed his career or turned his children against him or made his life miserable. Her revenge had been much more devastating and perfect. She had gotten happy. She had built a beautiful life without him, showing him exactly what he had thrown away and proving that she didn't need him to be complete. She had been kind to him throughout his healing process, which somehow made it hurt more than if she had been angry. Her kindness had shown him what real love looked like, love that wanted the best for someone even when they had hurt you. But the most perfect part of her revenge was that it had made him better. By refusing to take him back, by moving on completely, by showing him what he had lost, she had forced him to grow into someone worthy of love. David had collapsed when he first saw her with Robert. Not physically but emotionally. His whole sense of himself had crumbled when he realized what he had given up. That collapse had been necessary. It had cleared away all the lies he told himself about what love meant and what marriage required. Now, sitting in his garden with Linda's hand in his, planning a future built on respect and genuine affection instead of need and possession, David was grateful for that collapse. It had been the beginning of everything good in his life. Sarah's revenge had been perfect because it wasn't really revenge at all. It was just her refusing to be small anymore, refusing to make herself less so that he could feel like more. She had chosen to bloom after he tried to keep her in the shadows, and her blooming had forced him to find his own light. The phone rang one more time. It was Sarah again. I'm sorry to bother you twice in one night, but I wanted to tell you something. What's that? Robert and I were talking tonight about how grateful we are for the family we've all built together. This weird, complicated, beautiful family that includes ex-spouses and new partners and babies and grown children and everyone in between. David smiled. It is pretty weird. But it works. And I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For becoming someone we could build this with. For doing the work to be better. For letting me be happy without trying to destroy it. I know that wasn't easy. David felt his throat tighten. Thank you for showing me what I needed to become. We all helped each other become better. That's what family does. After she hung up, David sat quietly for a long moment. Linda had gone inside to clean up the dinner dishes, giving him space to process the emotions of the evening. David thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. The pain of losing Sarah, the humiliation of realizing his own selfishness, the hard work of therapy and self-reflection, the slow rebuilding of relationships with his children, the careful process of learning to love Linda without repeating his mistakes. It had been the hardest thing he had ever done, but also the most important. He had learned that real love wasn't about finding someone perfect to complete you. It was about becoming someone worthy of love and then choosing to love someone else perfectly, with all their flaws and complications. Sarah had taught him that lesson by refusing to accept anything less. Her revenge had been to demand that everyone in her life, including him, rise to their best selves. She had created a family where everyone was challenged to grow, supported when they struggled, and celebrated when they succeeded. David had thought losing her was the end of his story. Instead, it had been the beginning of the best chapter of his life. Linda returned with 2 glasses of wine and sat beside him. Penny, for your thoughts? I'm thinking about how lucky I am. Lucky. To have lost everything. To have had to rebuild from nothing. To have learned what love really means before it was too late to love someone right. Linda leaned against his shoulder. Your ex-wife is a smart woman. Why do you say that? She knew exactly how to get the best revenge on a man who took her for granted. What's that? Linda smiled and kissed his cheek. She became so happy without him that he had no choice but to become happy without her too. Everyone wins. David laughed, realizing Linda was absolutely right. Sarah's revenge had been perfect because it had made everyone better. She had won by refusing to lose herself, and in doing so, she had given everyone around her permission to find themselves too. As the stars grew brighter above them, David held Linda close and felt grateful for every mistake that had led him to this moment. His ex-wife had gotten her revenge, and it was the most beautiful, devastating, perfect revenge imaginable. She had gotten so happy that he had no choice but to get happy too. And they all lived better than they ever had before.